I met Blake in 2013 at a Denver bar event that my sister took me to, and we sparked up a conversation then, and we became friends as well as networking partners ever since. Unfortunately, I do believe we live in a more litigious society. It seems as if clients are more apt to, after one or two mistakes, either threaten a lawsuit or actually file a lawsuit. I refer clients to Blake because of his level of professionalism, his dedication to his work, as well as his response times. He's really quick to respond to our clients' needs, and that's one of the biggest reasons I refer clients to Blake. I believe Blake sets himself apart. At present, he's the only attorney I know that offers asset protection. He's also the only attorney that I know that travels around the world and sets up relationships with bankers and other professionals with the idea in mind to better his clients' needs. I prefer working with Blake because he sets himself apart in the industry. He's got relationships globally. He gets in touch with his clients right away, and he takes care of their needs as quickly as possible.
So my knowledge of asset protection has improved drastically working with Blake. I can tell you from an estate planning attorney here in the state of Florida that my strategies have been domestic in nature. And I'm sure as some of you guys have heard, or as you're aware, the domestic estate planning strategies aren't as robust compared to international estate planning strategies. Offshore trusts are an option, Nevis LLCs. Blake is well versed in all of these strategies, and since I've known Blake, he's taught me so much, and I'm able to better service my clients because of that. We absolutely live in a litigious society here in the United States. Florida is no exception, regardless of the jurisdiction you're in. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and I'm sure as you guys have seen the billboards while you're driving, there are plenty of personal injury attorneys that are lying in wait if there ever is any sort of injury that occurs, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a lawsuit because of a car accident. I can tell you that when it comes to an offshore strategy, that is what's going to insulate your assets in a much, much more effective way than utilizing a solely domestic strategy or just leaving it up to chance. You know, we as attorneys, we don't like to leave things up to chance. We want to ensure that our clients are taken care of through proper planning. When it comes to offshore strategies, that helps to mitigate your risk in an ever-increasing litigious society. So asset protection is important for everybody. I can say that working 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week isn't uncommon for many of my clients. I'm sure many of you are aware of inflationary forces here in the United States. It's been an issue for the last several years. When it comes to the amount of work that you have to put in to pay your bills, to grow your portfolio, to take care of your family, that's a lot of time that's wasted if any of that is dissipated due to a lawsuit or some creditor that comes around the corner because you haven't planned ahead. When it comes to offshore strategies, that's going to insulate your assets. And honestly, from an estate planning perspective, since I am an estate attorney here in Florida, it's going to insulate your children's inheritance as well. So a lot of my clients, a lot of my friends and family, they don't work super hard every day just for themselves. They do it for their family, and ensuring that that inheritance passes on to the next generation as tax minimized as possible, and avoiding creditors or any sort of predators who may sue. That's important. You want to ensure that your assets are protected, and it's very important for me as an estate attorney, and it's important to virtually everybody that I know that works hard for their money. So I met Blake a while back. I just happened to hear about him online after seeing some of his videos. I wanted to do a little bit more research myself to see how I could better serve my clients. I do realize that when it comes to domestic estate planning, there are a lot of limitations. You have to utilize some international strategies if you truly want to ensure that your estate is protected. And working with Blake has reiterated this fact, and I figured this before, but after working with Blake extensively, I realized that international strategies are absolutely necessary to some extent in order to protect your assets. As you guys are aware, there is no option in many jurisdictions in the United States to have a self-settled domestic asset protection setup. So some component of your plan, if you're concerned about asset protection, is going to have an offshore component that Blake is well versed in. and has the connections to support your needs. So Blake isn't one of those stuffy attorneys that you don't want to work with. He is communicative, he's responsive, he truly cares about your case. He's somebody that I've referred as many clients as I can. I refer to him because whenever I have a client who has an asset protection goal or an issue that they really do not want to have to deal with down the road, working with Blake ensures my clients are taken care of and are happy, and I do recommend working with him. So I trust Blake when it comes to protecting my clients' assets, not only because of his years of experience, not only because he cares about his clients and he's responsive. He picks up the phone when I call or when you call. He answers his emails and cares about his clients, but he also is well versed in what he does. He has the connections as well. So when it comes to working with an offshore attorney, you want to work with somebody who has established connections. It's not just the paperwork that's drafted that protects you and your family. It's the connection with that offshore trustee, with that offshore company that's going to serve you and protect you. So those connections are paramount, and I would recommend working with him. The clients that I've referred to Blake, they have been overwhelmingly happy. I've had absolutely no clients who have expressed any discontent with working with Blake, only good things. And I can say that all of my clients who I've referred to Blake, they truly needed his services due to the nature of their fields of work, whether it's medical doctors, engineers, business owners, anybody who has assets to protect, anybody who operates in a field where at the blink of an eye, their assets can be taken away by an unscrupulous creditor or lawsuit. When it comes to the protection that Blake offers, it's really important. And I haven't had any negative feedback from clients, only positive feedback from clients who want their assets protected. I can tell you from experience that working with Blake has been very easy. It's challenging working in the field of law. It's challenging trying to take care of clients. It's challenging to try and protect clients in an ever-increasing litigious society in the United States. The reality is it's difficult to protect your assets here in the US. That's why knowing an attorney like Blake is important, because having that offshore component is what's truly going to insulate your estate, to protect your assets, and that's really important. I recommend working with Blake. So I can say what sets Blake apart from working with other asset protection attorneys isn't only his experience, but also his connections and his sole specialization. So when you go to a small town attorney, they might do personal injury, they might do bankruptcy, and they might also do your will or your trust. You can't specialize in everything. There's only 24 hours in a day. And the reality is this is all Blake does. This is his sole specialty. This is what he does to serve his clients. And that's why I send all my clients to Blake and not any other asset protection attorney. So those connections that he has with offshore trusts, trust companies, with offshore protection, that is going to be really important in order to insulate your estate. Working with Blake has been a pleasure. We've been able to take care of many clients to ensure that their estate has been protected. We've worked with clients to ensure that their businesses are protected and that their family will be able to fall back on those assets that they've worked very hard to accumulate. I recommend working with Blake because of his connections with the offshore trust companies, with the offshore LLCs, and he's well versed in setting all of these structures up, but he also knows the right people to help manage those funds and to administer it, which is just as important. And again, his sole specialization in this field, it's ideal. You want to work with somebody who specializes and is not a generalist.
So Blake and I actually went to the University of Florida Levin College of Law, and we actually lived across the street and were neighbors. And so naturally we got to know each other, and we found that we actually had a lot in common. So over the years, we actually, after law school, kept in touch, meeting up for lunches and dinners. And then fortunately, we ended up doing a lot of business together, me referring him business and him referring me business. And it's really cool to have made like lifelong friendship. So knowing Blake over the years, I've come to know that he runs a really tight ship in terms of his law practice. So as soon as a client reaches out to him, he's responsive within a few minutes. And anytime I've referred a client to Blake, that's without fail. So that's number one, is really important. And then number two, the actual work product. I know that Blake stays on top of all the most recent changes in the law in terms of asset protection. He actually visits the countries, and that's proven by the pictures he has with the leaders in all these asset protection jurisdictions. And so all these are just signs that Blake is, at the forefront of his field and has great work product in terms of the asset protection product that he provides for his clients. I would say the number one thing that I've been super impressed about is that Blake actually has made it a thing to go to every single asset protection jurisdiction and to meet up with the leaders who are key players in the field, and then to actually evaluate which countries are the best ones. I haven't seen any other attorney do that, and that's key because at the end of the day, based on my experience as a lawyer, they say first you know the law, then you know the judge, but at the end of the day, it's all about who you know, and that's what I found. And if Blake is able to establish these key relationships in these key countries, that sets him apart. There's no better, more powerful thing to have than a key relationship in an asset protection jurisdiction. I would describe that it's enjoyable, honestly, because you refer the client to Blake, he immediately responds to them and the client's very happy. Then Blake's team, takes care of the client, makes him feel really good about the whole process. And then I get good feedback from the client that I refer. So for me, it's very enjoyable. As for Blake himself, he's very thankful for any referral. In terms of the relationship between myself and Blake, I always feel good about working with him. Blake is, I would say, number one, fearless. And the reason I say that is because I myself have tried to expand my law practice over the years. And there's a lot of costs with running a firm, and Blake is just fearless in terms of bearing those costs and pushing forward. And he's not fearful. And that leads me to the second word, which is really ambitious. He believes that he's going to succeed, and he doesn't even have a doubt. Other people might succumb to doubts. And number three, the word that I would use is competent, I would say, because as you can see from the videos that Blake does, he really knows his stuff. He focuses on the kernel of value that is provided in every single piece of legal advice. And that's really impressive to me because that's what keeps people engaged with his videos. That's what shows me that he knows what he's talking about. And I'm sure that's what's contributed to his success. I would say 100% lawsuits are more common nowadays. I've been on both sides of the equation. I've dabbled in some litigation. So I've represented some plaintiffs and I've also represented defendants. On the plaintiff side, it's really rewarding when, somebody's done something wrong and you can get justice for them. But on the defense side, a lot of times I see they're up against a plaintiff who just is completely unreasonable. And I have one of those cases right now. And in that context, I've seen more and more of that, which is kind of scary. The justice system is supposed to lead to a fair result, but yet we find these plaintiffs' attorneys just going after, millions of dollars in damages when in reality it could be just a couple thousand in damages, So that's an unfortunate reality of what we're dealing with these days. I definitely do think that it's become more litigious. I don't know the reason for that, but it seems like, the fabric of what used to hold things together, like courteousness, fairness, it seems to be eroding a little bit. There are certain things that are relating to asset protection, like homestead and everything. I already knew those things being a Florida licensed attorney. But what Blake has expanded my knowledge on is the offshore aspect of it. Just by him going to these jurisdictions, listening to his videos on Instagram, I've learned so much about what the options are outside of Florida, outside of the United States. And so that's how he's grown my knowledge in this area.